My name's Chris Sahloff. I am the creator, artist, letterer, pretty much everything of the comic C.R.I.T. It stands for Constantly Running Into Trouble. It is based on a Dungeons & Dragons homebrewed game that my friends and I play, and I record the sessions, I storyboard it, and turn it into a comic book. We have a Kickstarter for issue 7. It's the 8th issue in the series. We have 0 through 6 already out. Issue 7 launches this Wednesday, the 26th at 8 p.m. on Kickstarter.
You're now listening to Blerdkast, presented to you by Blerdography. What's going on, everybody? It's me, Mark. Welcome back to another episode of Blerdkast, the podcast where we interview a lot of people. And today is no different. I have yet another guest on. He's actually a little different. He's an all-around comic book artist, writer, creator, inker, penciler. He does it all. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name's Chris Sahloff. I created the comic book called C.R.I.T. I am I'm the only artist on the book. I do hire a colorist for most of my books just so I can get them out faster because I've colored a couple of them and they take quite a bit of time. And I have 42 books to make, so quite the job. So I do everything except for coloring on most of the book, and we're on issue 7 right now. That's launching on Kickstarter soon, and it's a comic book about my friends. We play D&D, and it's a superhero campaign we're playing, and it's just a bunch of fun and chaos. So the feedback I've gotten from everybody is they just really love the fact that it's like an organic story, and they can really relate to all the characters.
Fascinating. That's fascinating. I kind of don't know where to begin in jumping in and asking you about your comic book because everything that you have told me about it so far in the pre-show is fascinating. Like you just said, it's based off your D&D campaign. That by itself is just very interesting. And then the fact that you do so much of the work yourself. I want to go ahead and ask you, where did it get started? Where did the idea for C.R.I.T come from?
I had, we had played a couple sessions and I was bored at work and I was sketching out a couple things. I just started drawing some of the stuff we had done in the campaign. And I took it to the guys, and one of them was like, why don't you just turn it into a comic book? Never really thought about doing a comic book. In fact, when I was sketching it out, I had never really drawn comic art. I had done stupid, things in the past, nothing to speak of, some doodles here and there. And I just was really bored. So I started drawing a comic book. I got an entire issue done, and I was very proud of it. I showed my wife, who is a phenomenal artist. She looked through it and told me it looked just okay. I was heartbroken because I had put a lot of work into it, and she goes through one night, she's looking at it, hands it back to me, turns the TV on, doesn't even make eye contact with me, no change in tone in her voice, and she just says, it's okay. And that was the end of the conversation. So the next day, I bought an iPad, and I started trying to learn how to draw professionally. Every page that I drew, I brought to her and said, hey, what do you think of this? And she would erase and she would mark things out. And the harder I worked at impressing her, the more I made an actual comic book. And finally, I created what is now issue 1, and I didn't know how to color. So a friend of mine was like, hey, go to Kickstarter and get a colorist. You can get the money to get a colorist. So I did that. And then it's just been a snowball effect ever since because there was people that were actually interested in reading the book. So we just kept putting all of the stories that we play onto paper. And now we launched the first issue July of 2020. That's when I actually shipped the first issue. We are right at the 5-year mark or 4-year mark. It's just been a lot of fun, a lot of people that I've met, a lot of inspirations. I've worked really, really hard to make these books as professional looking as I can. I've got guys working on it and that work in the comic book industry that give me quite a bit of feedback. The big thing about it was putting my ego to the side. And, I had never drawn comic book art. So when I was showing my wife, who's, she's a professional artist, and these people I had met, and they would send back red marks and blue marks and all these different things, ripping these pages apart. It was just, okay, I've got more work to do. I'm very proud to say that in all these 7 issues, I've just continued to learn and grow, build with the community. The indie community is great. And I don't think we would be continuing to make comics had I not made all the connections that I made very early on.
Fascinating. Very fascinating. Tell me a little bit more about the process of actually creating this particular comic. Like you said, you record your D&D sessions from your campaign and you turn them into comics. Tell me a little bit more about that.
A typical game session is anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. Sometimes we'll have one story will be multiple sessions. What I'll do when about a month before I start drawing, I start listening to that session, because everything that's being published right now was played about 3 years ago at this point. I pull up that recording for a month. If I'm in my car, if I'm at the gym, anywhere I go, I'm listening to the recording and getting an idea for how that whole session went. I'm making notes on my phone, and then I'll just start like kind of storyboarding. This is how it begins, this is the middle, this is the end, and I'll start sketching some of the pages out. And what I'll do after that is I'll send it to the guys, get their feel for it. Like, what do you think of this? We change this, because I like to change some of the I guess the way each book is kind of directed. So because there's 5-6 characters at any given time, and writing a team book, you can't just have it on one character. We have a couple that shine all the time, but it's good to let some of the other guys kind of like come through. Mm-hmm. So we'll kind of realign some of the focus, give another character a chance to shine and do something cool with them. But really what you're getting at the end is our D&D session just kind of chopped down into a comic book. Once it's all storyboarded out, I spend anywhere from 2 to 3 months drawing, just doing all the line work. Every page, I as soon as I finish a page, that goes off to my editor. He rips it apart, sends it back to me. I fix it, and then it goes to the colorist. Once we get everything done, I get the script, because as I'm listening to the recording, I'm also getting all the dialogue. So I am typing out dialogue. I'm, sitting there in my phone with my voice, just like, remember this line, this goes here, because there's a lot of important dialogue, because they role play really well. I'll get the script ready. I get the guys to come into a Discord chat. I open up the PDF with the comic, and we go panel by panel, and we read the comic. As we're reading the comic, I'm editing the script. Maybe this will be better here, because some of it does get redundant. We're playing D&D, and there's 5-6 people at any given time.
Right.
So we kind of some of the redundancies. Sometimes they'll want to change what they said because they said something really stupid. And then once that's done, I letter it. We do another read through. And once I get the final on them, it goes to a couple proofreaders, and then it goes out.
You mentioned that your wife is an artist, and she just said it's okay, and it kind of just broke you, but it motivated you to just keep working at it. Tell me a little bit more about the process of refining your artwork and getting the look, the style that you have for your comic now. What was that process like? Was a lot of humbling you had to do, and just understand like, okay, this is just constructive criticism?
Yeah, I'm a musician, and when I joined my first band, I pretended that I knew how to play guitar so I could get in the band. And I impressed everyone with skills that I have. I remember that when I auditioned for that band, and I don't remember what I did, but they thought I was awesome. And then the first practice, the guitarist looked at me and said, "You don't know anything, do you?" I said, "Nope, not a thing, but I really want to be in the band." And so he worked with me for a really long time. That was very humbling for me, because a guy who had been playing for 15 years at this point was willing to take someone who knew nothing and show them the rope. So when I went to art, I had the same basic mentality of, I know that I don't know everything. When I do something, I know it's not going to be the best. It might be the best that I can do right now, but somebody else can come in and say, hey, tweak this a little bit, move this. It's still some work. Every book, I feel like I'm getting better and better. I actually gotta be proud of myself here. Every book looks better and better, but that's only because I have zero ego. I feel like if it was, and I had this conversation recently with a friend of mine, because he was like, man, you let that many people rip apart your work? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, for him, he doesn't let anybody see it till it's finished. And I said, but then, people who are paying for your comic, or your readers or your viewers, they're getting the best of you. I want everyone to get the best that they can. So if I have 2 or 3 people that look it over and they say, hey, tweak this, do this, it's a headache. I mean, the last page I drew took me a week. It's also a double spread, massive page. Everyone's fighting something on the page. It's in a train tunnel. There's lots of detail. The first time I drew it, I sent it out, and it got ripped apart by about 4 people. Not bad stuff, just move this, change this, this looks like this. 2 or 3 of the characters I wound up redrawing 2 or 3 times. And artists will know that's not an easy thing, especially when you're not just sketching the character, you're like drawing him in full with detail, with all the shading. And then someone says, nope, erase it and start over. That pose sucks. That leg shouldn't be there. Oh, now it looks dumb. You just kind of have to get used to it. I'm not going to be better unless I allow someone to give me feedback. And there's sometimes that I get feedback and I'll argue, like they'll say this would look better this way, but I'm actually trying to achieve something with how I drew it. So we'll look at it that way. And like I said, 2 or 3 people look at it. And as long as 2 out of 3 are cool with it, then we're fine. If 2 out of 3 hate it, then it's got to go.
That's actually really cool because I'm an artist myself, so I get that process. It can be a little enduring and it can be a process. Like you said, you kind of didn't really come from a place of knowing comics and things like that, so all this was new to you. So I think that's a little admirable that you reached out to other people and was like, hey, what am I doing wrong? How can I make this better? A lot of artists can actually take that note to make their work better. So that's really good. What does your wife think of your work now from that first moment where she was like, it's okay, to now you're about to start your seventh issue Kickstarter?
I'm assuming she's fine with it. I show her my work. She's like, oh, that's really good. But that's okay. When you've drawn upwards of 300 pages and she's looked at so many panels, there's times when she looks at it and she'll go, oh wow, like I like the composition of this page. She's not a comic book person. So some of the stuff she doesn't agree with because comics is different than traditional art and realism, which is what she focuses on. And there's exaggerations that aren't real. In an action panel you have many exaggerated limbs, perspectives and things to convey action and intensity. So she appreciates that, but I do know sometimes she's like, that doesn't look right because it's wrong. And then she has to remember it's supposed to be wrong. That leg is extended out longer, like that perspective is wrong because he's extenuating that kick, so the reader really gets that punch from the kick. No pun intended. She does appreciate it. Now, my child is a phenomenon because if I was to pull up some of her artwork, it blows away anything my wife and I can do. And she uses zero reference. She'll use paint in her art. She'll use random pieces of fabric that she'll weave into the paper. Now, my kid will also rip apart my work and say, hey, like, why don't you do this with the face or this with that? She's 14. She has, like I said, she has a better view than anyone, and her favorite stuff is manga. So she understands my work a little better. And it's funny because she'll be looking at it with my wife, and my wife will say, well, this is kind of wrong. And she's like, no, it's not, Mom. That's what they're doing because he's punching him. So the arm is supposed to be longer because it's like coming at you. Oh, okay. So it's cool that my whole family is, they're involved. They make me better at the end of the day. And I love seeing my kid tell her friends like, oh, this is my dad's comic. Look, I helped him with this.
That's awesome. I'm going to come back to that when we go to the getting to know you section, but I think that's really awesome. A family of artists. I do want to ask you this. Are you more proud in your daughter and her artistic skill set, or are you more proud in your comic and what you've been able to accomplish?
Oh, I will never be more proud of my kid, as a dad, especially watching her grow from like the stick figures to what she does now. Randomly last week she wanted to start stitching stuffed animals, and she just got the stuff off Pinterest, like the idea, and she comes home with something I thought she bought at the store. She's incredible, and no amount of comic books that I put out will ever trump the pride that I have in my child.
So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's go back to this actual Kickstarter, or not the Kickstarter campaign, the D&D campaign. Let's talk about your group that you game with. They clearly help motivate you into starting this comic. What do they think of the comic, and how do they really help you create the comic outside of just playing their roles?
I feel like sometimes I drag them into this, which I did. I made the comic book and I sent it to them, and they're, oh, this is cool. And then people started buying the book, and then they were like, oh, we need to be involved. Like,
of course,
script everything, because I was very long-winded. I was very over-explanatory in some areas. And Brad and Terrell, 2 of the characters, they were on the phone with me. I remember this. And they're like, we need to work on this. Like, they just wanted to work on some of the appearance and some of the coloring and some of the other stuff with me. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Every book, they got a little bit more involved. I would send, at first, I would just finish the book and send it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, hey, I'll send you every few pages, the pages that matter. And then it was, let me send you every page. And now we're at a point where we just have a group chat and I send something in. I either get a thumbs up or, I don't really see this character doing that way. It should be this way. Again, at the very end, we all get on a Discord now and they help me with the dialogue piece. For them, it's cool because they get to see their stuff come to life and they get to be, they're writers. They write their character. They help write the book. I wouldn't have the book without them anyway. So it's like a really cool ecosystem that we have because they wouldn't have a book without me. I wouldn't have a book without them, if that makes sense.
Right. Let me ask you this. Why specifically a comic book for this particular D&D campaign? You could have did web series, you could have did comics, you could have did a novelette, you could have did anything. Why particularly a comic book?
I couldn't tell you. It just happened. It was something that literally just randomly started. I grew up with comics. None of them, well, one guy collects comics. The rest of the group, they read manga, they watch anime, but I'm the comic guy. And I just started kind of like drawing it. It was just something that organically happened. It wasn't planned. And I think that's kind of the cool part was I never thought anybody would care about these characters. It was for my friends. I would have continued just to draw like some things here and there to give them visual reference of the campaign. But I do think that so we played C.R.I.T, the game for 5 years until it was done. And if you talk to any D&D group, if you get a group that's consecutively playing every month for 5 years, you've done something good. And I think the comic book helped keep the group together. It was a fun story and they saw it come to life, and nothing is cooler than me getting in a chat and saying, hey, somebody did a fan art of your character, or hey, like I made an action figure of your character.
That's cool. I'm sorry, that's cool.
Yeah. So I get asked that a lot, and it's a tough question because some people, I know a lot of guys in the indie community that have characters that were in their head when they were 10 years old, and then 30 years later they're publishing them. And I'm over here like, well, technically all of my characters are like 35, 40 years old, but none of them meant to be a comic book character until a few years ago.
Right. So since you said that all this was unplanned, clearly you didn't plan to start selling the book either. So how did that come about? And what was it like selling that first book and was like, holy crap, somebody gave me money for this?
Yeah, that was fun. So like I said, the first Kickstarter we put out there, I had no idea what Kickstarter was. I had no idea what indie comics was. I had no clue. Now, big fan of Image, didn't realize they were indie. Like I just thought they were a big label. Growing up, I collected comic books until the early 2000s. Then I started, touring, and I was a poor musician, so I could barely afford, a meal at McDonald's, let alone some comic books. So I get into this community, and I'm like seeing what, indie comics is about. I was kind of like overwhelmed at first, okay, so we have a Kickstarter and we have this. And so I do the Kickstarter, and I didn't ask anybody what to do. I just built it. Threw it up there, was like, cool, figured out how to order t-shirts, I just figured everything out on my own, and said, oh, so I need, they said that the average funding was like 1,000 to 1,500 for a comic book, and this was like 2020, 2019. So I just put it up there. I had no Instagram at the time. I was told, like Wayne's World, if you build it, they will come,
Right.
That's literally the description I got. I didn't need $1,000. I needed $500 to get the book colored, and I needed about $150 to print, because it was a very small run of books that were on there. And I wound up raising right at like 750 on Kickstarter. People, again, no promotion, no nothing, just word of mouth. And I did create an Instagram a few days later, got some traction. But ultimately it didn't fund, so I didn't get the money. And a friend of mine, he reached out to me and was like, hey, what is this? Like, what are you doing? And I told him. Now, this friend of mine, he got into pot fields before they were, legalized everywhere. He kind of saw it coming.
Mm-hmm.
So he has quite a few, and he has a private jet, and he has 2 Lamborghinis. Very wealthy individual. And he's like, well, how much do you need? And so I told him, and next thing I know, on Facebook notifies me, he just sent me money. So he's like, hey, whatever you do, I know you put your all into it, make the book. And so it was like just the most awesome moment that someone I used to work with, he's a very good, good guy, clearly, just thought that highly of my, I guess, not my ability, but, my work ethic, and was willing just to give me the money. So what I did was I contacted everyone on Kickstarter that backed it and said, hey, you're getting a free book, because Kickstarter never took their money. So I sent them all free books. Then I built a web store, and I just posted on my Facebook like, hey, I made a comic book. I shipped 150 packages. It was absurd. I sold them for like $6 plus shipping. So after that, it was like, I guess I kind of have to do this, like we sold 150 books out the gate, like that's cool. People just want to read about me trying to kill my friends.
Right.
The feeling was like surprise, if I had to use like a word to describe how I felt. It was exciting, but it was also like very surprising that many people cared enough to read something I created. The 30 on Kickstarter was really awesome because I didn't know them, but it's really cool when people I hadn't seen since high school were like, oh, I want to check this out. And they're still reading the book.
That's good. That's good. That's a really deep story. Because I hear so many like interesting stories about how people start their Kickstarter campaigns and how they go. That's a new one for me. Never heard that one. Like your friend just came and helped you out. That's really good. Since you brought up Instagram, I was on your Instagram page earlier and I noticed you are very busy now promoting the comic book and going to conventions and meeting fans and selling your book. What is that process? What has that process been like for you? Going to convention and promoting your book and having your table and your own booth and things like that, meeting the fans and just making even more money off of this.
Conventions are awesome. They're slow, you get tired, but when it's all done, you miss it. And I will stress, I really don't make money off of this. Anything that comes in goes right back into it. If my wife were in here, she would tell you that I've probably spent a lot more investing in, I have a stuffed cat. This cat, if you can see him, that is one of the characters in the book. That costs a lot of money. We have our own energy drink that I made. I just put everything back into the comic. Cons, they're like a hit or miss. If you've never done the con before, like, you can do cons, but if you consecutively do the same one, you see familiar faces. And that's what I realized. The first time I went, it was slow. We did okay. Second time, oh, I saw you last year, and then the third year, it's like, oh, I got your book last year. Do you have the new one? What's coming out next? So I follow your Instagram. I didn't get the last one, and I don't want to buy it online. I want to come right here to get it from you so you could sign it for me. That's really cool. I had a guy this last, I did Heroes Con, and he walks right up the table. He's like, I have all the books. I have that, I have that, I have that, I have that, but I do not have the cat, and I need the cat. I came here just for the cat. And I'm like, you came to Heroes Con just to get the cat? He's like, I got some other stuff too, but this is what I wanted. He was like, this is all I'm getting today. And I'm like, that's freaking cool, because it's not cheap to get in. I know he went around the whole entire thing, but he's like, yeah, I just walked in the door and I made a beeline. I saw on your Instagram, this is where you were going to be. And that was really cool. And then we had quite a few people that walked by. Hey, I backed last Kickstarter. When's the next one coming out? And then I had this girl who follows the Instagram. She she was at Heroes Con last year, got everything from me, loves the cat, comes right back and she's like, well, I didn't get book 6 last year because you were working on it. I want to pick that up. You don't get that on Instagram. You don't get that on like the lives,
Right.
You have good conversations with people, but knowing someone drove to a con, waited in line, paid the fees to walk in the door and come to your table, that's freaking cool. Just one person out of the entire thing, and it just floored me. If one person wants to do that, and next year there'll be more and more. Like I understand the trials and tribulations of doing cons, and it's
Right.
starting to really take shape.
So your Kickstarter for your 7th issue starts this Wednesday, correct?
Yeah, in 2 days.
In 2 days. Are you excited for it? Are you? I'm assuming you're expecting it to hit its goal and then some, and just get a lot more people interested.
I hope. I never go in thinking anything's going to work. I am a pessimist by nature, because if I get excited and it doesn't work, then I'm let down. But if I just go in and say, hey, it is what it is. Now I will say this is 7th campaign. Every single one of them is funded well over what they needed, and then some, except for the first one, which was a learning experience. I'm attached to 19 successful Kickstarters. I've helped many people, launch their books. So I think we're going to be fine. I'm not worried about it. I talk to me after day 1, and I'll tell you where I think we'll land. My concerns going into it, Kickstarter's down just a little bit. Your average American is spending an extra $1,000 a month just to live the same way they did 2 and 3 years ago. It's tough. I see a lot of people doing digital instead of physical, and that's fine. Really, at the end of the day, I don't care which type of version they get as long as they read the book, but I do think that we'll be fine. This book, it's like Scooby-Doo meets Ninja Turtles. So I'm very excited to get it out there. For those of you that do not know anything about the comic, it is very tongue-in-cheek. It's just funny. Imagine you and your friends just doing stupid stuff and recording it, and that's what Crit is. And every book is just more dumb, funny jokes. And this is just like any other one. I know people are going to enjoy it. Everything that I've shown people so far, they're loving it. There's some pieces of the script that I've already sent out to a few people and said, hey, this is the dialogue for this page and how this page flows. Oh my God, that's hilarious. You guys always take it up a notch. So very excited for that piece. And I think people are going to really enjoy it as well.
Gotcha. This is dope. I'm like, the more you tell me, the more I'm really interested in just really wanting to see one of your issues. Has been your favorite part of creating Crit, as far as the creation process between doing the D&D campaigns with your friends and forcing yourself to learn how to draw and get better, and actually getting prints back and finished work and colored ink pages inked and things like that? What has been your favorite part of this whole process?
That's a tough question, because there's a lot that goes into my book. I think my favorite thing the entire time that I've been making Crit was the issue 2. When I launched that, we got that back, and I was getting ready to ship some of it out. My daughter, who was around 10 years old at the time, she's in the living room laughing. She's just laughing, and she's saying, I'm gonna hit him again and again. And I forget the line in the book, and she's reading the comic, and she's just laughing her butt off at what she's reading. And at the time, I didn't know it was my book, and I'm like, "What are you doing? You're making all this noise." And she's like, "Oh, I'm reading your book. This part is so funny. Caliber is ramming this vehicle over and over and over again. And it's just so funny." Hearing her guttural laugh at something that I created and enjoying it that much, I think trumps any surprise openings. And we have a lot of stuff. When I say there's a lot of, I have 3 figures now, which I'm an action figure collector. If you can't tell from my
I
wall
can
here.
tell. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, there's more right there.
Jesus
So
Christ.
yeah,
I'm so jealous of you. I want that for this. I just got some Power Rangers stuff up.
yeah. Wife and I kind of fought about some of them. There's a lot of money on my wall, but
Oh,
I'm a huge collector, and when I have figures of my own, I have stuffed animals of my characters. I have an energy drink that's made, after one of my comics. That's all cool, but knowing my kid enjoys it is probably one of the coolest things. I'm that girl dad. Every time my daughter does anything, I'm right there cheering her on. I'm very excited for anything she does, and it's really cool to get that back. Especially from your kid, who, as a parent, 9 times out of 10, your kid really doesn't care about how much you work and all these other things that, as a young kid, you don't really get excited for the things that parents get excited for. But when she can read a comic book and go to school and say, this is my dad's, like, that's really cool to me. And then the other really, really cool thing that came out of this comic book was the character who plays Boulder. The guy in real life, he's an Olympic level wrestler. He is still he holds the 5th rank for most takedowns in the country still. We just found that out recently. He won some kind of award, and he graduated college, I want to say 10, 15 years ago. And he's still, holding that record. But, you get older, and he wasn't out of shape, but he wasn't in shape. He was coaching wrestling at the time. And he went home with the comic, and he was showing his kids, and they're like, yeah, Dad, you don't look like that. That's not you. And so he's like, I gotta get in shape. And dude gets in shape. When I say he gets in shape, he cut 60 pounds. He's running, he's dieting, he's training. And, I did bodybuilding for about 5 years, and I still maintain pretty good diet and exercise routine. So he calls me, he's like, hey, I need you to help me out. My kid just told me I don't look like Boulder, and I gotta look like Boulder. So, just to get that inspiration for him to actually get in shape just from his character in a book was really cool. There's a lot of really small moments, but they're all personal. It's great to open up a box and see something I created. Those interpersonal moments with people, because this comic book at its core is me and my friends.
Right.
This isn't a character that I dreamed up and I'm so happy to put out there. This is just me and my friends having fun. And if everyone enjoys it, that's awesome. I could have one person read it, and that could be one of my players, and I would be happy. Just the fact that so many people have been, have gravitated towards the book and love the character designs and love those things. That is just icing on the cake. But all those personal connections that I have with my friends and my kid, and seeing how it affects them, that means the world. There's a lot of moments that we've had. There was one of my players was going through a pretty rough divorce, and I got this in 1 week. I had 5 or 6 people that sent fan art of his character. Now his business wasn't publicized. There was nobody knew anything. They just liked his character so much. They kept sending me fan art. And so I said, hey dude, I got all of this week. And he calls me and he's like, man, I'm sitting at work. I'm having a bad day. It's been really rough this week. And this just made my day so much better, and I'm thinking in the back of my head, if we never created this, if this was never a thing, he'd still be having a bad day. But I got some of those prints for him. He's got them hung in his office. And now when people come into his office, they're like, what is all that? Like, oh, that's my character. That's me in superhero form. And not many people can say that, and right. I think being able to give that gift to my friends, again, that means more to me than anything. I have artwork that I've done everywhere, this big piece behind me. All the art you see behind me is stuff, except for the Spawn things. Huge Spawn fan. That's all artwork of mine on my wall. Love it all. Covers from other people. Pieces that I've collected from artists all over the world. Those are all great. I love all the crit stuff, But when my friend can call me and say, hey, this dumb little comic that we created made my day better, there's not a feeling that's better than that.
That's freaking awesome right there. I just gotta ask, what is your favorite piece what is your favorite piece in your room right now? Rather it's the guitar or the action figures, the comics, the signed work, because you got a lot.
You make it rough on me. So I told you my kid is an artist. I have some of her really early coloring work on my wall, and I'll show it to you. I'll spin let me move this light. So you see all these pieces on my wall right there.
Like, dude, your room is so sick. I'm sorry. Your room is so sick.
So that piece right there that I'm shining the light on, like that was a cover. All that's cover art. But if you look up, that was a Father's Day gift that I got when she was 9 years old.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah. But as far as my crit stuff, this right here, this cover, this wide piece. So this is 4 covers. I asked a friend of mine, can you make for issue 3, can you do this huge connecting thing with the villains and the heroes? And he did it, and then we got it printed in a poster. And that, even though we're on issue 8 right now and I have some phenomenal covers, nothing beats that 4-panel cover of all the villains, all the heroes just going at it. That's like X-Men style work right there.
Right. That oh my god, that's so dope. I like your style, sir. I like your style. What's after this Kickstarter concludes, when it's over, what will be next for Crit and you and your friends and your adventures? Where do you want to go 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line with this?
So the goal within the next 3 years is to get either some funding for this publishing for my own, because I'm an independent publisher, or have a larger independent publisher pick it up. There's going to be 42 total issues of the book, and getting some financial backing, or even, not even just financial, but just the name backing. So, we all know if you go to Kickstarter by yourself, that's great. And you can, there's some big guys out there that do quite a bit, but it would be very, very helpful to have an actual publisher at least have the name, money, but even just the name to draw some of their fans. And I think back to music, back when what was it, Roadrunner Records, I would get like a tape from them. I was a young kid, and I would get like a demo tape of some of the bands they had, and I just remember any band that was on Roadrunner, I wanted to pick up their album, So I feel like if I got onto a bigger publisher, you do have fans of the publisher that are going to just check your stuff out. I do want to toss something out for everybody listening. Issue 0 is a free download on my website. It's not a printed book anymore. I was printing it. It cost more money to print it because it's very short. It's 18 pages. And I don't want to charge $5 for 18 pages. So what I've done is that is part of the trade paperback. You get it in printed form in the trade, but it's a free download. So if you just go to homebrewedcomics.com, go to the store, you can find issue 0. It's absolutely free. You can download it. I actually didn't draw that. If you remember, we talked about that comic my wife handed me back and said, that's just okay. So, and I told you the next day I went out and I bought an iPad. So that first tablet that I had, it was a Samsung. It was a good tablet. It was about a $600 tablet. A guy that I knew in Australia had been doing a lot of fan art. I found out he was drawing on his phone, and it was phenomenal work. And I said, if you can draw on a phone, imagine what you can do with an actual tablet. So I got some of the guys together. It cost $150 to ship it. Me and 2 other guys he had done some work for, we shipped in the tablet, and he said, hey, I want to redraw that issue 0 that you did. I'm going to redraw it for you. So he did that whole, it was, like I said, it was only 18 pages. He redid the whole thing for me as a thank you. And I actually had a part of it. I had issue 3 on Indiegogo, and I was able to raise some money and give him some money for it too. But you know, I put it on the website as a free download, so you can check it out. Because if you've played Dungeons and Dragons, you know the first session is always everybody trying to figure their characters out, and
Right.
where they start in the beginning is not where they end up. Because by the end of the session, oh, I want to change this, I want to move this, I want to do something different. So I kind of do that by giving them different suits, and
Ah.
it's very tongue in cheek because the first session, I want to be Ant-Man, and I want the strength of Ant-Man with a suit like Captain America. I want to be the most basic, soldier out there. I want to be Ghost Rider. So there's a few of them that just had these stupid ideas. So when I made the comic, I like Ant-Man and Captain America mixed together. So you get these kind of like almost like copycat suits in the beginning. And at the end, they change their suits, and it's like an inside joke at the very end. It's like, so why do we change suits? And one of the characters goes to avoid copyright infringement. Like, it's an actual joke in the book, because when I went to publish it, they were like, yeah, we can't use those suits anymore. Like, we actually have to design characters. So it's a tongue-in-cheek inside joke that is still kept in the book, and I think everyone will appreciate it. So Homebrewed Comics, download the issue 0 for free.
What has been one lesson that you have learned from doing your first Kickstarter campaign to this Kickstarter campaign? If you can go back and tell yourself now and tell your younger self, like, hey, don't do that. What was one valuable lesson you have learned that you could go back and tell yourself?
Promotion is key, and partnerships are key. So I can post on my Instagram all day long, but it doesn't matter. I need to be doing shows like this tonight. So I have yours. Then I have one when we're done. I have one at 8. I have another one at 9. I have another one tomorrow morning. I have one tomorrow night. Then I launch on Wednesday. And on Wednesday, I don't know if I came up with this, but my friends tell me I was the first one they saw do this. I do a live launch. I've been doing live launches since my second book. To me, it was just something that made sense. I would go live on Instagram, get people together, do the announcement, get everybody in the chat till I have like 10, 15 people, launch the book, hoping they all go. Watch, 5 or 6 people drop off the chat, which means they're on, they're on Kickstarter back in the book.
Right.
And we started funding very, very quickly doing that. And if I could go back and tell myself in the beginning, promote and collaborate. How I do my Instagram lives when I launch, I get my friends to jump in and help me promote the book. We're a community. While we are independent comics, you can't do this on your own. You can try, you can be successful. There's some guys out there that 100% are doing a great job at what they do, but they have people with them. They have teams. And if you think that you're a solo guy, you're going to go out there and do this all by yourself, you're going to have some headaches that could easily be fixed by having a group of people that are like, hey, let's help move this boulder with you, and getting those guys on the lives would be the first thing I would say. If I could go back, promote, get your friends to help you. There are people out there that want to see you succeed, and don't ever, ever, ever cold launch a book. I did it twice. Second one, I blame COVID. I actually got COVID on my birthday. I was launching a few days later, and when I went to launch, I didn't submit the book for approval because I was just that sick. I forgot. I went to launch it and I couldn't because it hadn't been approved. So I had to cancel all the promotion and get all the people come back 2 days later when they finally approved it. Luckily now, because I'm attached to so many Kickstarters, all I do is I hit submit and it's approved. That's one thing with Kickstarter. The more you do and you're successful and you ship and they see that you're active, you will get that benefit.
Gotcha. So you said you had another podcast in like 10 minutes. So yeah, let's make this quick. Let's finish up the show. There's a couple of other questions I would love to ask you, but unfortunately we are out of time.
You can shoot them to me if you want, if that'll work. If you want to shoot me a message, I can answer them for you.
Well,
later.
actually, what I wanted to do was just invite you to come back on the show because I haven't even
Oh,
gotten into like learning about you and just like what were your favorite comics growing up and just like things you like to geek out to. So I would love to just have you back on the show. But I do want to give you your soapbox moment so you can talk about anything that's close to your heart or anything that you want to promote, or any issue that concerns you and just is important to you.
as far as the promotion, I have talked a lot about my book. I think anybody that's listening knows now it's a D&D book. It's close to my heart. It's me and my friends. I can't tell you how much fun you're going to have reading it. I've had people tell me that when they middle of the book, they've thrown the book across the room because they're just laughing their butt off. So check it out, homebrewedcomics.com. It's going to be on Kickstarter, like I said, in 2 days. But I think when you air this, we'll be about a week into the campaign. So jump in there. I'm adamant about pricing being affordable. I want everyone to be able to access the book. My books, they start off $8 for 26 to 30 pages. So it's nothing unreasonable. And as far as, the issues, our world is full of issues. Just treat each other the way you want to be treated. That's like a motto in my life. My mom taught me it when I was a kid, and that's kind of how I live. If you treat people the way you want to be treated, generally, unless you are a sadist, it works out.
Gotcha. I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on the show. Before I give my little spiel, I do have one final question to ask you. Since you talked about publishers, and where you wanted to go in the next 5 to 10 years, which publisher would you want to pick up your book, and which publisher would you want to avoid? Because I've heard a lot of people say positive and negative things about going the publishing route versus self-publishing.
I'd love to either get on so Dark Horse, Boom, and Image all have, Image is top indie comics. So you can't,
Right.
it's in the top 3 comic book publishers. But I do think like Dark Horse and Boom both have titles that really fit in with what I'm doing. Yes, we have superheroes, but it's not a superhero story. It's a very different superhero setting. It's almost in line with like Invincible and The Boys and stuff like that versus the Avengers. So when I talk about the theme, I don't have a lot of recurring villains, because if you've played D&D, they always kill the villain. They always, they're murder hobos.
Right.
They're just being real. We have some that make it through, and I give them plot armor. But really, I think I would love, and I know Dark Horse kind of like they're kind of on a wave, but just having that Dark Horse name on it would be really cool, because I love Dark Horse comics growing up, and Boom is doing a lot of really cool stuff. So either one of those. Now, this one's gonna make you laugh, but Sumerian would be fun, only because I was in a metal band for a long time. I was signed to a actual label. I was on Warped Tour. I did a whole bunch of stuff there. That's why you
Oh
see
wow,
the cars.
really?
Yeah, I toured. I did like 3 US tours. That's a whole podcast by itself. That was 6 years of my life. I've got 2 albums that you can buy in stores. We're still on Spotify. We get about 1,000 to 1,500 plays a month, and we haven't played in 15 years. That music wise, it'd be cool to be on Sumerian, because they just bought I forgot which comic book company they bought. They came in and bought this comic company. I was like, man, I gotta submit for them, just because they're owned by a metal label, and that'd be fun.
Wow. If you don't mind me asking, what years were you on the Events Warped Tour? Because I might have seen you and not even like known, because I
We
was
did
in
the East Coast for I know we were on there 06. I want to say 06 and 07. I want to say 08 too. I left in 08. I don't know if they continued on it. But yeah.
Okay. It might have been around that time. I want to say 09, 2010. Again, podcast for another day. We'll have to go
Yep.
back and do that. But thank you so much for coming on. For everybody, please check out C.R.I.T. It drops, the Kickstarter drops this Wednesday. Thank you so much for coming on again. And like, you have so much to say. I can't wait to have you back on. and like actually just get to know you. Like you sound like you've lived a very fascinating life away from comics, and I just want to dig deep into like how you were in a band and you now do comics. Like that's that's actually a really awesome life. I'm sorry. That's just a really awesome life. You are living my dream right now, creating comics and like rock and roll and being in band. That was all me in high school right there. Now I do podcasts and videos. Life is weird, but thank you guys for listening. This has been Blerdkast. You can listen to Blerdkast everywhere that you listen to your podcasts, like Spotify. Anchor is no more, but Spotify, Google, and Amazon, and everywhere else. Apple too, Apple Music. And you can also watch these episodes on my YouTube channel, Blerdography. New episodes of Blerdkast drop every Wednesday. Stay tuned and see y'all later.